The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Hundreds of alien representatives from across known space filled the floating platforms, their voices creating a symphony of panic and desperation. The emergency beacon had been active for 3 straight days, and everyone knew what that meant. Another species was about to die. Ambassador Valthari materialized in the center hologram, her usually pristine blue skin now cracked and faded like dried paint. The Zilani were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders, artists who created the most beautiful sculptures from living crystal. Seeing her like this sent chills through every delegate present. Honored council members, she began, her voice shaking so badly the universal translator struggled to keep up. I speak to you from what remains of our capital city. Behind me, you can see the approaching wall of destruction. The hologram shifted, showing a horrifying sight. What had once been a gleaming metropolis of crystal spires was now a churning mass of gray metal. Massive mechanical creatures, each the size of a building, crawled across the landscape like hungry insects. Everything they touched simply vanished, consumed and converted into more of themselves. The Devourers appeared 6 months ago, Valthari continued, tears streaming down her face. We thought they were just meteors at first. By the time we realized what they were, they had already consumed our northern continent. Our children's schools, our hospitals, our art galleries, all gone. Counselor Morden, a tall reptilian from the war-loving hegemony, stood up slowly. His species had conquered half the galaxy through sheer military might, but even he looked defeated. We sent our best battle fleets. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids, energy shields that had never failed in 1,000 battles. These machines just adapted. They learned from every attack and became stronger. The Trade Federation tried next, added another voice from the crowd. Their quantum disruptors could tear apart molecules themselves. The Devourers studied the technology for exactly 47 minutes, then became immune to it. A smaller, more fragile alien spoke up with a whisper that somehow carried across the entire chamber. The collective attempted a psionic attack. 50 of our greatest mind warriors joined together to assault their consciousness directly. The machines absorbed our mental energy and used it to think faster. The chamber fell into a heavy silence. In the galactic community, these 3 powers represented the pinnacle of military technology. If they had all failed, what hope was left? When a young aide in the back corner, barely old enough to attend council meetings, raised a trembling hand. His voice was so quiet that many delegates had to activate their hearing enhancers. What about the Deathworlders? The reaction was immediate. Several aliens gasped audibly. Others made gestures of protection from their various religions. The very mention of that forbidden world sent shivers through species who had never known. True fear? Everyone knew about Earth. It was classified as the most dangerous planet in known space. Crushing gravity that would flatten most galactic citizens? An atmosphere so corrosive it could burn through protective suits? Weather systems that regularly produce storms capable of leveling cities? And the creatures that live there especially, the humans, were considered barely above savage animals. Ambassador Valthari looked around the chamber one final time, her eyes reflecting the desperate hope of a drowning person reaching for anything that might save them. "They're our last hope," she whispered. The delegation ship Harmony's voice drifted through space toward the infamous blue-green planet, its crew barely containing their terror. Captain Zeekthin had commanded vessels through black holes and navigated asteroid fields during solar storms, but nothing had prepared him for this mission. His 4 hands shook as he reviewed the environmental data for the 100th time. Gravity reading 1.9 times galactic standard, his science officer reported, her voice tight with fear. "Captain, most of our species would be crushed. Flat, just trying to stand on that surface." Zeekthin nodded grimly. The numbers were worse than the stories. An atmosphere containing 21% oxygen, a gas so reactive it would corrode most metals and burn through organic tissue. Weather systems that regularly produced wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. That was considered normal for this nightmare world. "Look at those storm formations," whispered the navigation officer, pointing at the main screen. Massive spiral hurricanes covered entire continents, each one powerful enough to destroy their home cities. Lightning bolts the size of buildings crackled between clouds that reached into the planet's upper atmosphere. "The worst part isn't the storms," added the science officer, consulting her instruments with obvious dread. "It's what lives down there. It's the dominant species, these humans. They actually evolved in these conditions. Their bodies are built like biological weapons." The crew had all heard the rumors. Humans were said to be incredibly dense, their bones harder than most alien metals. Their muscles could function in crushing gravity that would kill other species instantly. Most terrifying of all, they seemed to enjoy physical conflict and actually became stronger when challenged. No wonder the Council considers them barely civilized savages, muttered the communications officer. What kind of creature could thrive in hell itself? That's when the transmission came through, catching everyone off guard. The voice was surprisingly calm, even warm, though the universal translator struggled with the unusual language patterns. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Jin of Earth's Defense Command. We've been monitoring your approach and received the Galactic Council's emergency broadcast about the Devourer situation. How can we help?" Captain Zeke then stared at the communication panel in shock. There were no demands for territorial concessions, no requests for rare minerals or advanced technology in exchange for assistance, no threats or shows of force. Just a simple question about how they could help complete strangers facing extinction. "This is Captain Zeke Than of the Galactic Council delegation," he responded carefully. "Admiral Jin, we need military assistance against an enemy that has defeated our strongest fleets. The situation is desperate." "Understood, Captain. When do you need us there?" The simplicity of the response left the entire bridge crew speechless. Every other species in the galaxy would have spent weeks negotiating terms, discussing costs, and weighing the risks. These supposed savages from the Death World were ready to face annihilation alongside people they'd never met. Asking for nothing in return, Zeke Than felt something strange wash over him, an emotion he'd never experienced before. Time since the Devourer crisis began, he felt genuine hope. But alongside that hope came a deep shame at how wrong his people had been about these remarkable beings. The orbital shipyards around Earth buzzed with activity that defied everything the alien delegation thought they knew about primitive civilizations. Admiral Jin stood on the command bridge of the EDS Indomitable, watching dozens of massive vessels take formation with a precision that made military experts across the galaxy look like amateurs. "Fleet status report," Jin called out, his voice calm, despite the magnitude of the crisis they were about to face. Commander Na looked up from her tactical station, her fingers moving across holographic displays with practiced ease. "Vessels are combat-ready, Admiral. The resilient, defiant, and unyielding battle groups have completed their final equipment checks. We're loaded with everything from kinetic artillery to experimental electromagnetic pulse devices." Lieutenant Han, at the communications console, turned toward the Admiral. "Sir, the alien delegation is requesting permission to observe our tactical briefing. They seem quite interested in our approach." Jin nodded approvingly. "Grant them access. They need to understand how we operate if we're going to work together effectively." The delegation from the Galactic Council entered the briefing room with obvious nervousness. Captain Zeke Than and his insectoid advisors had never seen human military personnel up close. What struck them immediately was how calm everyone appeared. These weren't the savage warriors they'd expected, but professional soldiers discussing strategy with the same casual confidence they might use to plan a weekend picnic. Commander Na activated the tactical display, showing detailed schematics of the Devourer machines. "Based on your intelligence reports, these enemies adapt to energy-based attacks within minutes. They've already overcome plasma weapons, particle beams, and quantum disruptors." "That's correct," Captain Zeke Than confirmed. "Every conventional weapon system in our arsenal proved useless." "Then it's a good thing we're not conventional," Na replied with a slight grin. The display shifted to show the human fleet's armament. "We've loaded our ships with kinetic slugs, electromagnetic bombs, thermite charges, and something we call impact mines." One of the insectoid ambassadors leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting confusion. Your weapons are so ... primitive. These are technologies our ancestors abandoned thousands of years ago. The human officers exchanged glances, and several smiled. Lieutenant Min from the engineering department stepped forward. Ambassador, sometimes the old ways work best. These devourer machines think in patterns, adapting to whatever attacks they face. They're probably programmed to handle the most advanced weapons in known space, but they might not be ready for a simple chunk of metal traveling at 30% the speed of light, added Commander Knott. Or for chemical reactions that don't rely on energy signatures they can analyze and counter. Admiral Jin pulled up footage from human military history showing ancient battles where smaller, less advanced forces had defeated superior enemies through unconventional tactics. These machines are designed to fight a galactic war using galactic rules. We're going to fight them using Earth rules. Captain Zekthon studied the display with growing amazement. You're planning to introduce chaos into their ordered system. Exactly, Jin confirmed. While they're busy trying to figure out why we're throwing rocks and setting off chemical explosives, we'll be adapting faster than they can process. That's what humans do best. The human fleet materialized above Zalani Prime in a spectacular display that sent shockwaves through the watching alien vessels. Instead of the orderly formation that galactic military doctrine demanded, the 72 Earth ships dropped out of hyperspace in what looked like complete chaos. Some came in high, others low. A few even approached from the planet's shadow where sensors couldn't track them properly. Captain Min gripped his command chair as his flagship. The Soul's Fury led the first assault wave toward the planet's surface. Below them stretched a nightmare landscape that had once been the beautiful crystal cities of the Zalani. Half the planet was now a writhing mass of gray metal, with mechanical creatures the size of skyscrapers crawling across continents, like hungry locusts. Visual contact with the enemy's swarm, reported his tactical officer. Estimated count is over 10,000 individual units, sir. The Galactic Council forces had fought these monsters from a respectful distance, using their most powerful energy. Weapons to try and overwhelm the Devourers through sheer firepower. It hadn't worked. The machines had simply studied each attack, adapted their defenses, and kept consuming everything in their path. The humans had a different plan entirely. All squadrons execute Tactic 7, Min ordered into his communications. Array, get in close and make them angry. What happened next defied every principle of space warfare that had been developed over thousands of years. Instead of maintaining safe firing distances, the human pilots dove their ships directly into the mechanical swarm like ancient fighter pilots attacking bombers. They twisted and rolled between the massive devourer forms using their ship's superior maneuverability to avoid the sweeping arms and energy beams. Target their communication nodes, Min called out as his ship screamed past a devourer the size of a city block. These things coordinate like a hive mind. Cut the network and create confusion. Lieutenant Su's fighter squadron followed his lead, their ships loaded with kinetic penetrator rounds instead of energy weapons. They flew in patterns that would have gotten them court-martialed in any other military. Weaving between the mechanical giants and delivering solid metal slugs at point-blank range directly into the creature's sensor arrays, the Devourers, designed to combat the long-range energy weapons favored by galactic civilization, found themselves struggling against an enemy that fought like nothing they'd encountered before. Their adaptive programming had prepared them for plasma cannons and particle beams. Not for small, fast ships that flew like atmospheric aircraft and fired simple chunks of metal. "This is Commander Yu," crackled a voice over the battle communication network. Pattern recognition confirmed from Sector 7. These machines adapt to energy signatures within minutes, but they're much slower at countering physical impacts. "Copy that, Yu," Min replied, banking his ship around a massive mechanical arm that swept through the space where he'd been seconds before. All units maintain close engagement. Keep moving, keep hitting them with kinetics, and don't give them time to adapt. The human attack was working, but the real test was still coming. 3 hours into the most desperate battle the galaxy had ever witnessed, the mechanical nightmare began to show its true intelligence. The Devourers had been studying human tactics with the cold efficiency that had already doomed a dozen civilizations. Their hulls started growing thicker, developing dense armor plating that could deflect the kinetic rounds that had been tearing through them. Earlier, Colonel Juan crouched behind the twisted remains of what had once been a Zalani school, watching his best marksmen fire their railgun rifles at an approaching devourer the size of a building. The solid metal slugs that had punched through enemy armor just hours before now bounced off harmlessly, leaving barely visible scratches on the machine's surface. "Well, that's just fantastic," one muttered, ducking as the mechanical creatures' sensor beam swept across his position. He activated his communication device with practiced comm. "All ground units, this is Colonel Juan. Plan A is officially dead. Time to switch to Plan B. What happened next would be talked about in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. While other species might have retreated to develop new weapons over months or years, the humans did something that left the watching alien fleets completely speechless. They adapted in real time, right in the middle of active combat. Engineer Rin had been working frantically in a makeshift laboratory set up in the ruins of a Zalani crystal factory. Around her lay scattered pieces of the beautiful materials that the Devourers had consumed and then discarded as useless. The machines had eaten the metals and ceramics, but hadn't bothered with the decorative elements that held no structural value. "Command, this is Engineering Team 7. Rin called into her radio while mixing compounds with the focused intensity of someone defusing a bomb. "I've got something that might work. These monsters have been eating Zalani construction materials for months, but they never bothered analyzing the artistic elements." She held up a modified explosive device that looked like nothing any galactic military had ever seen. It was built from discarded Zalani crystal fragments, human chemical compounds, and what appeared to be random pieces of alien technology, all wired together with standard Earth electronics. The beauty of Zalani culture is that they mix their building materials with reactive crystals for color, Rin explained while carefully loading the device into a projectile launcher. These machines consumed the structural elements, but ignored the pretty bits. "If they want to eat our stuff, let's give them some serious indigestion." The first modified charge detonated inside a Devourer's processing chamber with spectacular results. Instead of simply damaging the machine's exterior, the explosion came from within. Using the creature's own consumed materials against its internal systems, the mechanical giant staggered, its coordination disrupted as internal components failed in cascading failures. "It's working," shouted Lieutenant Park from his position across the battlefield. "The modified charges are causing system-wide malfunctions." Within minutes, human engineers across the combat zone were replicating Rin's success, creating new weapons from the debris around them faster than the Devourers could adapt to counter them. "Major." Tay pressed himself against the cracked wall of what had once been a Zalani elementary school, his small team of specialists working with quiet intensity around him. The building's beautiful crystal architecture lay in ruins, but it provided perfect cover for the most dangerous part of the human battle plan. For the past 6 hours, they had been doing something that seemed completely insane to any rationale. Military observer. They had been feeding the enemy on purpose. Sergeant Kim. Status report on the bait packages. Tay whispered into his communication device, watching as small Devourer scout units crawled through the rubble, just meters away from their position. "All 17 devices have been consumed." "As planned, sir," Kim replied from his concealed position near the school's former playground. "The machines took our communication equipment, portable computers, and even Private Lee's personal tablet without any suspicion." Beside Tay, a young Zalani female named Kestri clutched a damaged crystal sculpture, the last remaining piece of her family's art collection. Her large eyes reflected both hope and terror as she watched the humans prepare their final gambit. "You certain this will work?" she asked in heavily accented Galactic Standard, her voice barely audible above the distant sounds of battle. "These creatures have destroyed everything we ever built. How can your simple computers defeat them when our greatest technologies failed?" Tay checked his wrist device one final time, watching as green lights indicated that all the consumed human Technology had successfully integrated into the Devourer network. His weathered face broke into a grim smile that had nothing pleasant about it. The problem with artificial intelligence, Keshtri, is that it thinks logically, he explained, while inputting the activation sequence. These machines were designed for perfect efficiency and flawless coordination. Every decision they make is calculated to achieve maximum results with minimum waste. He paused, his finger hovering over the final command button. But human-computer logic doesn't play well with others. We program our systems to handle chaos, contradictions, and multiple possible solutions to the same problem. We actually build confusion into our technology because that's how human minds work. Across the planet, consumed human devices suddenly came alive inside the Devourer network. Personal computers began broadcasting conflicting navigation data. Communication systems started sending contradictory orders. Even simple entertainment devices began flooding. The mechanical intelligence with random information that made no logical sense. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfectly coordinated swarm of machines suddenly found themselves receiving thousands of contradictory commands simultaneously. Some devourers stopped consuming altogether, paralyzed by conflicting instructions. Others began attacking and consuming each other, their targeting systems confused by the chaotic signals, flooding their shared consciousness. The vast mechanical intelligence that had conquered a dozen worlds began to fragment into smaller, isolated units as the network overloaded, trying to process information that followed human logic instead of machine efficiency. Captain So's triumphant voice crackled across all human communication frequencies. All units. This is Captain So. The network is compromised and fragmenting. The enemy is in complete disarray. Time to finish this fight once and for all. Medikjun sprinted through the chaos of active combat, his medical scanner beeping frantically as it detected life signs. Buried beneath the rubble of collapsed Xylani buildings. Explosions echoed around him as human forces engaged the confused Devourer units, but June had a different mission entirely. While his fellow soldiers fought the mechanical monsters, he was racing against time to save the civilians. Trapped in the wreckage, the alien delegates watching from their command ships couldn't believe what they were seeing. According to every military doctrine in galactic history, warriors focused on defeating enemies, not rescuing strangers. Yet here was a member of the supposedly savage Deathworld species, risking his life to save people he'd never met from a completely different civilization. Over here, Jun called out, his scanner detecting a weak heartbeat beneath a pile of crystal debris. He began carefully moving the sharp fragments, his armored gloves protecting him from the razor-edged materials that had once been part of a beautiful Xylani home. An elderly Xylani male looked up at him with eyes clouded by pain and confusion. His translucent blue skin was cut in dozens of places, and one of his forearms hung at an unnatural angle. When he saw the human face behind the medical mask, fear flickered across his features. "You should leave us," the elder whispered in broken galactic standard. "Your people need to save yourselves. We are already dying." Jen gently activated his medical scanner, checking for internal injuries while carefully lifting the alien onto an emergency stretcher. "That's not how we work, grandfather," he said softly, using the respectful term his own culture had taught him for elders. "Yet nobody gets left behind. Not today, not ever." The old Xylani stared at him in amazement as June administered pain medication and stabilized his injuries with practiced efficiency. "But we are not your people. Why risk your life for strangers?" "Because someone needs help, and I can provide it," Jun replied simply, already scanning the area for more survivors. That's enough reason for any human. Cross the battlefield. Engineer Yoon faced a much more difficult choice. The primary devourer hive, a massive structure the size of a mountain that had been growing at the planet's core, required manual detonation from the inside. The explosive charges needed to destroy it were too heavy for remote delivery. The radiation inside would fry any electronic detonation system within minutes. EUN studied the mission briefing one final time, calculating the odds of survival. 0%. The charges required manual activation from deep within the hive's central chamber, and there would be no time to escape before the explosion. "I'll do it," she said quietly, volunteering before anyone else could speak. Her commander tried to argue, but Yoon was already loading the massive explosive charges into a portable carrier. "Sir, someone has to do this job, and I'm the best qualified. I know those machines better than anyone else on the team." As her transport approached the hive's entrance, Yoon activated her communication system for the last time. Her voice carried across every human frequency, calm and determined. "This is Engineer Yoon. This is for everyone who can't fight back. See you on the other side." The explosion that followed was visible from orbit, marking the beginning of the end for the Devourer plague. The silence that fell across Zilani Prime was almost as shocking as the battle that had preceded it. For the first time in 6 months, the mechanical grinding and consuming sounds had stopped completely. The last Devourer unit powered down with a final electronic whine, leaving behind a planet scarred but alive. Admiral Jin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching his fleet immediately transform from a military force into something the galaxy had never seen before. Without waiting for orders or formal requests, human ships began deploying medical teams, engineering crews, and supply convoys to the planet's surface. "Admiral, all combat units are requesting permission to begin humanitarian operations," reported Lieutenant Han from the communications station. "Permission granted for all relief efforts," Jin replied without hesitation. "Priority goes to medical assistance and infrastructure repair. We need to get these people back on their feet." Commander DA led one of the first relief teams to reach. A large group of Zilani refugees who had been hiding in underground shelters for months. The aliens emerged blinking into daylight, their crystal-like skin dulled by stress and malnutrition. What they saw defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The same human soldiers who had just fought the most vicious battle in galactic history were now distributing food, setting up medical stations, and playing with Zilani children who had forgotten what safety felt like. "We've completed our analysis of the Devourer construction materials," Da informed the refugee camp leaders, consulting a tablet filled with engineering data. "The good news is that we can help rebuild your cities stronger than they were before. Our engineers have developed construction techniques that can incorporate the consumed materials into new buildings that will be virtually indestructible." The Galactic Council delegation watched in complete amazement as human engineering teams began demonstrating technologies that seemed impossible. They showed the Zilani how to build structures that could actually bend without breaking during earthquakes, infrastructure systems that could repair themselves when damaged, and defensive networks that learned from each attack and became stronger. "These are incredible innovations," whispered one of the council scientists. "Our greatest architects have never conceived of such adaptive construction methods." But what truly shocked the alien observers was that the humans shared every piece of technology freely, without patents, licensing fees, or territorial demands. They uploaded complete technical specifications to public databases and offered to train Zilani engineers in the new construction methods. "Ambassador." Vilthari approached Admiral Jin as he supervised the relief operations, her voice filled with confusion and wonder. "Admiral, I must ask you something that my people cannot understand. Why do you help us like this? You owe us nothing. We never offered you payment or territory in exchange for your assistance." Jin paused in his work, looking out across the scarred landscape where human and Zilani teams were already beginning the reconstruction process. Smoke rose from cooking fires where human medics were preparing food for refugee families. Children from both species played together in improvised playgrounds built from salvaged materials. "Ambassador, the answer is simpler than you might think," he said with genuine warmth. "Someone asked for help, and we were able to give it. That's enough reason for any decent person." 6 months after the Battle of Zilani Prime, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never witnessed such an extraordinary gathering. Representatives from over 300 species filled the massive chamber, their conversations creating a symphony of excited chatter in dozens of languages. The Golden Dome overhead, which had witnessed countless debates over territorial disputes and trade agreements, was about to host the most significant vote in galactic history. For the first time since the Council's founding over 2,000 years ago, They were considering inviting a Deathworld species to join as a founding member of their new defense coalition. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The same beings they had once considered barely civilized savages were now being asked to help protect the entire galaxy. General Sun stepped up to the central podium, representing all of humanity. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial uniforms worn by other military leaders, she appeared in simple Earth's dress uniform, her bearing confident but not arrogant. The chamber fell silent as she began to speak. Honored delegates, 6 months ago, most of you had never heard of Earth, except as a cautionary tale about dangerous worlds. Today, you're asking us to help guard your civilizations. She paused, looking around the vast assembly. We're honored by your trust, but let me be clear about what humanity offers and what we expect in return. A ripple of anticipation moved. Through the crowd, every species present had their own agenda, their own demands for power and territory. What would the Deathworlders want? We don't want to rule anyone or claim anyone's territory, Sun continued, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. We don't want special trading privileges or exclusive access to your technologies. We just want to be the ones you call when everything looks impossible, when conventional solutions have failed, and when someone needs help that no one else can provide. The simplicity of the statement left many delegates stunned. Ambassador Belthari, now fully recovered and representing the rebuilt Zalani government, was the first to stand in support. Soon, the entire chamber was on their feet in approval. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Within weeks, human training academies began opening on worlds throughout the galaxy. These weren't military conquest outposts, but educational centers, where humans taught alien species something revolutionary: the concept that no problem was truly unsolvable if you were willing to adapt, improvise, and never give up trying. Commander Lee established the first academy on the trade world of Nexus Prime, teaching disaster response techniques to species who had never experienced natural catastrophes. On the mining world of Kepler Station, Engineer Park showed alien engineers how to build structures that could survive anything from earthquakes to meteor impacts. But perhaps the most important change happened on worlds like Zalani Prime, where the next generation was growing up with a completely different understanding of what it meant to be strong. In the rebuilt Crystal Cities, children played games about brave humans who came from the scary planet to save everyone, learning that true strength came not from avoiding danger but from facing it to protect others. The species once feared as Deathworld barbarians had become the galaxy's guardians through their willingness to help.